Welcome, everybody. My name is Baylor Rice. I am one of the pharmacists and owner here at South River Compounding Pharmacy. So welcome to our webinar today on insulin resistance. So we'll start easy this afternoon. I'll have up a couple of disclaimers on there. I'll let you read through. Eric did send out a copy of the slides to everybody prior, so you should have received a PDF with that. If you can't find that in your inbox, certainly pop us an email or give us a call and we'll be sure to send that back out to you. Also, after the recording today, the webinar, this is being recorded. Therefore, if you have any questions, please do so using the chat feature. Keep yourself muted so it keeps good, clear audio for those listening to this in the future. But send your questions in and we'll answer those as we go along the way. And otherwise, we will, once this is done, probably at some point either later tonight or tomorrow, Eric will also send out a recorded copy to everybody and a link to it on the YouTube channel. Poll is about closed. I'll go ahead and address that right now. I asked, do you have a blood sugar issue? And half the people that responded said yes. And then someone else, other people didn't get an answer or said no, just want to learn. So that's fantastic. I'm a huge advocate on education, which is why we do this webinar series. So I think the more we can learn and educate ourselves, the better. Absolutely. So for those that are new with us this afternoon, South River Compounding Pharmacy, we are a compounding only pharmacy. We were the first compounding only pharmacy modern day in Virginia. We are accredited by CHHC and PCAB. We also specialize in natural medicine. Again, we were the first natural medicine pharmacy in Virginia, and one of the few in the United States, certainly at that time. Vitamins, minerals, herbals, homeopathics, we are really kind of your true East meets West. So what we can do to get you healthy, keep that bar up as long as we can. For those of you that have heard me speak before or that have seen me, I'm all about optimal health. Instead of anti-aging, I call it optimal aging. Anti-aging, I think, is truly definition. If you're not aging, then you're dead. So we want to age. I want to get older, but I want to get older as healthfully as possible. And so with that, we do offer personalized consultations. I have been trained in functional medicine and integrative therapies, and we have a whole host of testing that's available to look at things just a little bit differently, if you will. So to get into today's meat of the presentation, if you will, diabetes, really, this is a huge issue in the U.S., huge issue globally as well. But since we're in the U.S., I'm gonna focus on us here in America. At risk, there's over 133 million Americans. And you'll notice the data on this, 2016, you may say, well, Baylor, today's 2021. But even last night, I was pulling up, the data for 2020, data for 2021, all of it, because of the way that has to be compiled and put in and gone over, really 2016 is unfortunately the earliest you see it in studies and data from the CDC. It's really kind of interesting how it takes a lag with that. Some stuff certainly I could pull up into 2020, but not crisp and clean for you. So that's why you may look at this and say, yes, this is a few years old. Well, there is a reason for that. It just takes time for all the scientists and statisticians to get everything together. So at risk, you're talking 133 million Americans, and this is having a body mass index of greater than 25. So typically people are over 45. So generally, we're going to see some central obesity, having a family history, inactivity, high blood pressure, the standard American diet. So these are some of the things that we see in these patient types. Those with prediabetes, this is affecting 79 million Americans. So really, that's when you're looking at that fasting blood glucose of being greater than 100, really between that 100, 125, or having an oral glucose tolerance test and that up above 140, or having a hemoglobin A1C greater than 5.7, but really between that 5.7 and 6.4. So that's what's considered at risk. Now, I've got to tell you, so ideal, right? Ideal, I want that glucose at around 85. I want really that hemoglobin A1C, really less than, I want that less than 5.5. And then, that glucose 85. Body mass index, really obviously less than 25. But most of the time, kind of, in that upper teen for most of us. And then, of course, getting into diabetes type 2, that's affecting 26 million Americans. That's really by definition fasting plasma glucose of greater than 126 or 2-hour postprandial of greater than 200, hemoglobin A1C greater than 6.5, or having a random plasma glucose up above 200, right? So that's what's going to hit those data points for that classification here. So point with this slide is certainly there is a graduation here, which is why I titled this today Insulin Resistance, because the more we can do earlier, the more hopefully we can avoid and turn the ship around, right? And certainly when you add these together, you're talking over 200 million Americans being impacted by this. And so that's a huge health impact. And then certainly from a financial impact, absolutely massive financial impact. Uncontrolled blood glucose. So again, to kind of look at this, how it has increased and is increasing through the years there. Again, right now we're over that 200 million mark. Going back just a little more than 10 years ago, you're just talking about 150 million. And then projected for 2030, we're going to be up somewhere between 300, 350 million Americans in the U.S. And this is really looking at adults, which is pretty scary. Then you tie in the adolescents, you tie in that whole pediatric population. That number is going to go really through the roof, even higher. This is really a 21st century health problem, really, the carbohydrate intolerance and glucose toxicity, overconsumption of sugars and low quality carbohydrates. This is leading to the development of glucose toxicity and chronic illness well before diabetes. And that's why I'm stressing that at risk, and then kind of pre-diabetes, and then of course diabetes. So this isn't generally something all of a sudden you wake up one day and, oh, I've got a diabetes diagnosis. There's leading up to this. There's things that you can do. You are in control of it. You are really the master of your destiny with this. It is, we've all heard you are what you eat. Absolutely. It really is a product of what we do to ourselves. Nearly 60% of the population is predisposed to carbohydrate intolerance, and really without a solution, this national epidemic will continue to grow and grow and grow. So if we think about what's happening here, right, I'm going to try to make this slide as simple as I can. We eat food. Food gets turned into a usable sugar, glucose, right? What uses the most glucose of anything in our body? It's our brain, right? So once we eat that food, then the pancreas is secreting insulin. So that insulin really serves as channels to help get that glucose into the cell. Once it gets into the cell, it's transported. You've got micronutrients, macronutrients, help to transport that to the nucleus. So then the nucleus sends signals to the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the engine piece of the cell. That's what's producing that cellular energy, right? So what happens here is when we have insulin resistance, this cell wall becomes very stiff and rigid, right? So the insulin has a hard time coming in and attaching. Therefore, we're not getting that glucose into the cell like we need to in proper transport. So certainly we're going to discuss some things today that are going to be imperative in helping with this process. One of which, and I say this in all my weight loss protocols and consultations, you'll see right here, EPA, DHA, omega-3 essential fatty acids, fish oils. Fish oils help that permeability of this cell wall. It helps it to be more pliable, more flexible, therefore getting that insulin to come in and making it easier for that glucose to come in. So the more stiff and rigid the cell wall is, the more likely it is it's going to bounce off. Insulin resistance, right? Resistance. That cell is resisting that binding of the insulin to be able to get the glucose in. So that's where that terminology comes from. Other terms for this are things like dysglycemia, syndrome X. The list really goes on. And, as this happens, then we see increase in inflammation, right? We're not utilizing the sugar properly. We're not getting proper energy utilization out of the cell, right? So we end up getting very unhealthy cells. We get damaged cells, and there's that mitochondria. So, it's supposed to come in, glucose come in, get transported to the nucleus, signals to the mitochondria, and then that burn out of the cell. So, what's really cool is we can take this to a cellular level. So what you ate, and all of us like candy, right? At least most of us. Sure, I like candy as much as the next person. Candy and sweets. You eat candy and sweets, but your body thinks it ate this, right? Your body thinks you had something healthy. So what happens here, right? So what happens is, your blood sugar starts to drop, you get hungry, you eat a sugary meal. Sugar spikes up rapidly, right? So what did I say a moment ago? You eat food gets turned into glucose, and then what happens? The pancreas secretes insulin to be able to help handle this sugar. So what does that do? That insulin's processing the sugar, but bam, all of a sudden that sugar drops, and it drops below that threshold. So then that's when we feel that lull. And we've all done it before. We've all eaten something because, we're low in energy or we needed something quick, and then bam, we eat it, and then, 30, 60 minutes later, it's like, shoot, what do we do? Oh, what happens sometimes? Then you reach for something else sweet, right? And then you get that ping pong, right? You're bouncing around. And that's where so many people are really stuck, right? And that too much sugar, is causing that sugar crash. So that ends up to that dysregulation, and ultimately the hunger begins, the adrenals start secreting the cortisol. So then again, that kind of is affecting that belly fat. And that's why so often when, and I speak of the adrenals, so the adrenals are handling our fight, flight, our stress, our what we're exposed to, right? How we're handling the stress, the everyday stuff. Well, that's affecting the sugar carb cravings, and that's affecting how we're doing it, which is in turn affecting that fat, right? And it's an evil, evil, evil cycle. Feel hungry, we eat something, we make insulin. If we're resistant to that, then it's stored as fat. It's stored as fat instead of utilized as energy, right? If it was utilized as energy, then we wouldn't be feeling tired and hungry, and we wouldn't be eating again, and we wouldn't be perpetuating this thing around and around and around and around. Okay. So let me introduce something to you called metabolic syndrome, right? So metabolic syndrome, really, it's categorical points. You've got to have 3 of the 5 criteria needed for the diagnosis of what's called metabolic syndrome. So one of which is looking at the waist circumference. So there is a difference with men and women. So for men, it's greater than or equal to 40 inches. For women, it's 35. Elevated TG, triglycerides, right? When it's up above 150. Now, ideally, optimal for triglycerides is less than 100, okay? Reduced HDL. So HDL is the good cholesterol, right? So when that is below 40 for men and below 50 for women. So kind of the higher the better for HDL, but I say that kind of with an asterisk, right? Why? Because there is something called dysfunctional HDL, to where if the HDL is too high, then that can actually cause an issue. Separate conversation for a separate day, but I just want to make you aware of that. Elevated blood pressure. So if that systolic is really above or equal to 130 and the diastolic is above or equal to 85, and or if you're on drugs already for hypertension, for elevated blood pressure, or elevated fasting glucose. So if that fasting glucose is running 100 or above, and it's more than just one time, right? If you run it, check it once and you're at 105, maybe you happen to eat something within the last 2 hours. So it's really checking that over several times. And if 3 different times you're running 105, 107, 110, 115, then okay, we've got an issue. Or if you're already been diagnosed and you're being treated for elevated blood glucose, and maybe you're being treated and now it's down to 95. Well, you're still being treated for it, so that's still an issue, and that would be a checkbox. So if you check off 3 or more of those, then that's where the diagnosis of metabolic syndrome comes in. Another way to say that is your body's in metabolic disarray. Metabolically, you're not handling things like you need to, which is ultimately increasing inflammation, which is increasing disease, which is shortening your lifespan and decreasing that. When you think about optimal health, right? We want that bar for quality as high as we can, as long as we can, and then boom, just one day drop dead and be gone. So sugar, not fat, raises your cholesterol. So that's one thing that is important to understand, is that carbohydrate metabolism. We want that to be healthy, right? We're going to eat some carbs, but it's handling the carbs. It's having more healthy carbs versus that sugary, quick processed carbs that are going to come into the system and then be processed by the liver and increase cholesterol, increase body fat, increase the fat in the liver. That's what those that's what the excess carbs are going to do. So bad, right? We want to limit those excess carbs. For patients with type 2 diabetes, ideally, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, so that pre-diabetes piece, that's having that hemoglobin A1C somewhere between about 5.6 and 6.4. Type 2 is above that or equal to 6.5. The fasting glucose, if you're running between 100 and 125, that's really that pre-diabetes insulin resistance realm. Above 125 is going to be type 2, and the 2-hour glucose 140 to 199 for pre-diabetes. Type 2 is greater than 200, right? So, ideally, if we eat something 2 hours later, we want that blood sugar to be back, coming back down, coming back towards normal. Right. And certainly monitoring that at home. There's so many self kits that you can do. It's easy to monitor this at home and see where you are. Ideally, do it in the morning before you eat anything, right? And get in the habit of doing that if you've been running an issue. And then you can, if you eat a meal and then you can check it 2 hours later and see where you are. So these types of machines are very easy to use. Where they get you, quite honestly, are the strips. That's where the money comes in. Most of these companies out there, you can go online and sign up and they'll send you a free unit to measure it and give you, a trial box of 10 strips or something like that. And then, the money's in rebuying these guys right here. And, don't even ask me which one's best. All of them do about the same, right? It's whichever one's most cost effective for you. All of them are going to be pretty accurate. So many of the things these days, you can tie in with your mobile device and get as fancy as you want to be. Do you need that? No, you don't need it. Some people are more techy and want that piece, and that's absolutely fine. The most common long-term diabetes related health problems are damage to the large blood vessels of the heart, the brain, the legs, so that macrovascular complications, and also damage the small blood vessels, which that's affecting the eyes, the kidneys, the feet, and the nerve endings. So the microvascular. So this is why, what we see with long-term issues, we see long-term issues with diabetes, we'll see increased heart disease, we'll see the brain not working as well, we'll see burning, tingling, numbness in the feet. We're not that micro and macro vascular circulatory problems. That's why we see problems with eye health. So increased eye disease, you see increased kidney and renal function issues. It's affecting circulation. So, and ultimately for some people that can end up leading down the road to amputations. So this is a very serious thing. We take blood sugar very serious at South River. Carbohydrate intolerance and glucose toxicity may lead to, certainly as we're speaking today, diabetes, hypertension, renal disease, that sensation, loss of sensation in the hands and feet, so burning, tingling, numbness, sexual dysfunction, right? So decreased orgasm, decreased erections, and of course that can happen for both men and women because clitoris is very similar to the skin and the tissue on the head of the penis. Hormonal imbalances, yeast overgrowth, Alzheimer's, dementia, can put Parkinson's in there too, and eventually death. Causes certainly of insulin resistance, certainly the recurrent high levels of the blood glucose, so hyperglycemia, decreased muscle mass and inactivity. So what's an answer there? Get active, move around, get the heart pumping. Chronic inflammation. Now this can be from our diet, our lifestyle, toxins, pathogens, leaky gut, dysbiosis, malabsorption. So the gut, right? The gut is definitely a window to the world. We do have a variety of webinars on our YouTube channel. We do have one on inflammation. We do have a webinar on gut health. Most of these are open source. You can go to our YouTube channel and kind of scroll through. If you get there and don't see something, you can always send us an email. Some of these we do have to send you links that we kind of have to send out that we can't keep open for a variety of reasons. So anyway, if you do go on there and see something that, you know what, I wonder if they've got that, certainly give us a call, and we're trying to add that to our website to have a page with what we've got open and what we've got that you need to let us know. Certainly also nutrient deficiencies, right? And if we go back to that slide that I had with the cell and the nucleus of the cell and the mitochondria with the engine, right? So the, insulin comes in, helps to get the glucose in. It's that micro and macronutrients to help with that transportation. So, vanadium, selenium, alpha lipoic acid, your amino acids, there's a variety of micro macronutrients that are going to help with that transportation and help with the signaling to the mitochondria. And then of course, ultimately the burn out of the cell, energy in, energy out, right? Pharmaceutical drugs, those affect insulin resistance, right? I'm a pharmacist. I'm also trained in natural medicine, trained in functional medicine, right? There's a time and a place for pharmaceuticals. And there's always kind of a price to pay. Yes, on one hand, it may help me with this, but then I've got a side effect or I've got an issue that pharmaceutical is causing over here. And that's why wherever possible, I'm going to gravitate towards natural medicine. If we can have the positive without having the negative from the synthetics, all the better. Receptor defect or cellular defect, right? So lifestyle induced. Some of these are lifestyle induced, some of it's inherited. So here I want to give you with a tidbit. 65% of genetics is modifiable. Again, I'll rephrase. I'll say that again. 65% of genetics is modifiable. So just because you may be genetically encoded, meaning for blood sugar issues, so meaning, Baylor, my mom had blood sugar issues, my dad had blood sugar issues, mom's sister had it, grandparents had it, everybody in the family or a lot of people in the family had blood sugar issues. Does that mean that you're going to have a blood sugar issue? Well, yes and no. If you eat like them, if you act like them, if you do what they did, then I would say at that point, your chance is pretty darn close to at some point, you're going to get it, right? But if you change your lifestyle, if you change what you do, maybe they were smokers and you're not smokers. Maybe they were inactive and you're active. Maybe their diets were pitiful and awful. And yours has improved, right? We've learned so very much over the time. And so certainly what we fuel our bodies with, we know makes a huge difference. So we can affect how the genes express themselves. So this is huge. This puts you in the driver's seat. This gives you the ability to change your course ultimately, right? So, let's try not to be this guy, right? Although, hey, I'll enjoy a beer as much as the next guy, and I'll enjoy pasta as much as the next. Now, granted, my pasta is going to be gluten free instead of gluten, and my beer is going to be gluten free instead of gluten. However, do we want to be doing this every night? No. Do we want to watch our portions? Yes. Right. We want to be aware of what we're doing and how we're doing. So certainly those recurrent high levels of blood glucose causing the high carbohydrate intake and its impact on human health. So certainly the starch, the low fiber is increasing the risk of type 2, right? High carbohydrates increasing metabolic syndrome. All moderate fat intake may reduce the risk for metabolic syndrome. So our knowledge on fats through the years has changed. Now there's good fats and there's bad fats, certainly. Certainly the sedentary lifestyle and high carbohydrate intake certainly are going to increase that low-grade chronic inflammation and increase that risk for cardiovascular disease. So we need to get up. We need to get moving. We need to move. Now, most recently, I was reading an article and some reports about a month or two ago. And prior to this, I would tell people, look, I want you getting 150 minutes of cardio a week. So I want that heart rate elevated 150 minutes a week, whether you do 30 minutes 5 times or 3 times 50 minutes. Is 150 minutes of cardio a week. And then on the days that you're not getting the cardio, give me 10,000 steps a day. Well, the most recent report came out and looking at these cardiovascular risk factors of looking with blood sugar and cholesterol and blood pressure. And guess what, folks? That wasn't 150 minutes. Now it's at 300 minutes per week. That's where we need to be. So if you're really kind of 40, 45 and above, that's where we need that heart rate elevated, right? How high do you elevate your heart rate? Well, that depends on your health. So you need to check with your practitioner. You need to check with somebody that you're working with. You at least want to get that up, over 100, probably more so about 120. For me, I do a lot of cycling. So, when I'm doing just kind of a low grade cycle around the neighborhood and that sort of thing with the kids, I'm getting my heart rate up to about 120. When I go off mountain bike riding, my heart rate's going to be elevated in the 160s. I'm going up and down hills, I'm hitting it hard, and I'm doing that for a good hour, 60 minutes at a time, and having that up and elevated. And certainly I can feel it. I feel better, brain works better, I have more energy, decreased inflammation. Yes, you're going to see the impacts and the results of that. Dysbiosis and obesity, right? So I mentioned the gut a little bit ago. So we don't think the bacteria are directly making the mice eat more, but the bacteria are causing low-grade inflammation, which causes insulin resistance. So this was out of a study, obviously looking at a study with mice. So increasing that inflammation, causing insulin and affecting the insulin resistance. So good bacteria for the gut. If we're having yeast, if we're having bacterial overgrowth, then that needs to be addressed, right? Researchers looked in people who took multiple courses of antibiotics face increased risk of developing both type 1 and type 2 diabetes through alterations in gut microbiota. The risk was increased by 37%. That's huge, right? So don't ignore your gut. If you're having gas, if you're having bloating, if you're having reflux, if you've been on lots of antibiotics, if you have yeast issues, pain, discomfort, or, are you pooping every day? Or, how is your poop? right? Is it loose? Is it hard? You know, so many people I see every day, well, Baylor, you know, yeah, I poop, but bowel movement every couple of days, 2, 3 days. Ideally, bowel transit time's 18 hours. So if you eat, you should be pooping 18 hours later. You know, I recommend most people, let's have, you know, a good 3 meals a day. And that's where the science is at, 3 meals a day with some snacks in between if needed. So therefore, you should be pooping 2 to 3 times a day, right? So for the folks that are just going once every 3 days, or Lord knows, occasionally I'll see somebody once a week, and that's only with using something to go, there is an issue and that needs to be addressed. We can't expect to have a healthy system if the gut is off. And side note, you know, 60, 70% of the immune system surrounds the gut, right? We're on hopefully the downswing of COVID at the moment, right? So the more the gut is off, the more that's going to put us at greater risk for having issues with that virus infection. Antibiotic use is tied to diabetic risk. Those who filled 2 to 4 prescriptions had a 23% higher risk for diabetes. Those who filled 5 or more had a 53% higher risk. So certainly science is there such that antibiotic use may disrupt that gut balance, causing changes in insulin sensitivity and glucose tolerance, which can further lead to diabetes. Gut, right? Changes with motility, affecting energy, affecting triglycerides, and the triglycerides depositing in the adipose tissue, the fat, decreased short chain fatty acid production, increased bacterial translocation, again, leading to metabolic endotoxemia and even low-grade inflammation, which certainly if anybody has an autoimmune disease, certainly we need to be looking and thinking about the gut as well, right? I get asked all the time, what about artificial sweeteners? What are they doing? Absolutely, they alter the microbiome. The different mix of the microbiomes changes the metabolism of glucose, causing levels to rise higher after eating and to decline more slowly than otherwise. And the big three are saccharin, sucralose, and aspartame, right? So your yellow, pink, and blue. Blended out the names to not necessarily pick on any brand names there, but I'm sure you've all seen that on the table. Food insulin index. Now, I know these names are very, very, very small to see. So the next page I've kind of made a little bit higher. And what I want to point out here, because I know this isn't extremely clear here, but what I want to show is look it through, really, I guess I'll go up through there, right? So, you know, if we go back through here, the food insulin index, right? So ideally you want this lower rather than higher, right? So I'm talking focusing here on the higher guys. Look what's here. You know, grape nuts, rice bubbles, shredded wheat, right? Frosted Flakes, Lucky Charms, cereals, right? So we tend to think, oh, well, let's give our kids cereal for breakfast. You know, let's get them going. What are you doing? Giving them sugar, lots of sugar. Let's bring in some protein in the morning, right? Ideally 15 grams of protein to start the day is how we want it. You know, some other things that are here, certainly baked beans, and we think, well, gee, beans and that sort of thing are higher in protein. Well, baked beans are certainly higher in sugar. Low-fat strawberry yogurt, mango fruit drink, pretzels, muffins, iced tea, chocolate chip cookies, ice cream, crackers, more cereal, chocolate brownie, and then bananas right there, right? So banana is one of the higher fruits with regard to sugar. Not saying necessarily don't eat a banana every so often, but, you know, not necessarily every day and not more than one a day, okay? So be aware of what you're eating and the impact on our insulin and our glucose. So, you know, really it kind of starts with a healthy body composition. So looking at that fat mass, looking at lean muscle mass, and then we start getting some central obesity. We start seeing a little bit of insulin resistance, a little bit of altered body composition. So that's really going into that metabolic syndrome with body composition changing, And then we'll start to see the blood pressure go up, the triglycerides increase, the cholesterol increase. So then that's really pulling in the metabolic syndrome with the cardiovascular risk factors. And why is that important? Well, cardiovascular disease has been the #1 killer for men and women in the United States outside of this past year with COVID time, right? That COVID overshadowed it this past year. But now that COVID's on the downswing, I think cardiovascular is going to reclaim #1 spot again, probably for 2021 and certainly for 2022. And then ultimately, this goes on into type 2 diabetes, hyperglycemia, that blood sugar going up, right? So guys, we want to be down here. We want to take care of ourselves. So what can I do? What are some of the preventative steps? What are some of the solutions? So, besides, providing us with movement in our everyday, we want to be moving, we want to be going. We want to also kind of repair, we want to make sure we get the right fuel on board. We want to make sure we get that right food to really fuel the fire, to fuel the engine, to do what it needs to do, serve as a building block, to repair, replace, and help with the damaged, worn out cells, and to help protect us from disease. In the course of a lifetime, a normal person is going to consume about 50 tons of food. What we select to eat is certainly turning out to be much more important than anyone previously thought. So, you can see here, we got a lot of color of the rainbow through here. This is good food, real food. So some supplements for insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, and even type 2 diabetes. Well, I kind of look at it as baseline. This really kind of pulls into with baseline. Our phytonutrient multi is a food-based multi with methylated Bs, either doing 2 tablets or 3 capsules. The capsules, it does take more because they can't compress it into a smaller space. So it does take 3 capsules to equal 2 tabs. Certainly the fish oils, as I said, helping with that permeability of the cell wall membrane. Whether we do the soft gels or whether we do it as a liquid oil, it doesn't matter to me. But ideally, especially when we have a blood sugar issue, we need to get that overall EPA and DHA content, which are really the active constituent within fish oil, up to 4,000 milligrams a day. Okay, so 4,000 milligrams equal 4 grams. So that's not just of fish oil, but that's of EPA and DHA. So our 1,000 milligram fish oils aren't just 1,000 of fish oil, it's 1,000 of EPA and DHA per soft gel. I call it what it is, right? Our pure omega 2400 fish oil liquid is 2,400 milligrams of EPA and DHA per 5 mLs, which is teaspoon, right? So that's why I say, 2 teaspoons daily. Store it in the refrigerator. It's extremely clean. Both of them are clean. For those that say, well, I can't tolerate fish, I have burpy aftertaste. Well, you've probably either one of 2 things: have taken a bad fish oil, it's made improperly, or you have insufficient stomach acid. If you're taking a well-made fish oil and you're still having that issue, then we need to think about your gut and we need to address issues with your gut. Vitamin D3. Vitamin D helps with the immune system, helps with inflammation. We need it, right? Especially with COVID, we need at least 5,000 IUs of vitamin D, and generally, especially for this, with K2. K2 is going to help drive the D as well as the calcium into the bones, and the K2 is also going to help against the calcium really going to the cardiovascular system and the arteries and the vascular system, so helping against that endothelial buildup, right? So I go ahead and like having that K2 built in with the vitamin D. Now, if you have a lab on vitamin D, I will take that number much higher. Optimal, and it's vitamin D-25OH is what the lab's called. The range is from 30 to 100. That's what LabCorp and Quest call normal. Optimal, though, is between 60 and 80. So I can't tell you how many times a week I'll have patients say, well, my practitioner said I was normal, I was at 35, or they didn't talk to their practitioner, they just got their lab back and said, oh, 35, normal is 30 to 100, I'm good. No. We need to double that. We need it between 60 and 80, right? So I will take that higher than 5,000, but I would like to see a lab before I do that. But I feel very comfortable at 5,000 a day for prevention for adults, okay? What do I consider adult? Somebody 100 pounds and over. So, when my boys, were 13, 14 years old and already hit 100 pounds, I was going ahead and having them on 5,000 a day. Metabolic Protect, that is a formulation that has alpha lipoic acid, berberine, and biotin in it. It's all combined into one, hence the name Metabolic Protect. What did I say earlier? Metabolic Syndrome. That's what we put that formulation together for. Typically 2 capsules twice a day. Ultrafluorobiome Pro, 1 a day, best times at bedtime. That's going to help promote that sugar and cholesterol utilization. Okay. MCT oil, you can add it to a meal. It's going to help increase really that satiety. So that's going to help make you feel full so you're not eating as much. And that's also going to help improve insulin sensitivity. If you need to kind of reset the taste buds, if you need to help support liver, gut, help reduce some toxins that are affecting the yeast, etc., then maybe we need to think about doing a detox. So we've got kind of 10-day detoxes that are in a kit, easy to do with guidebook and diet and everything. If it's, well, Baylor, I've got chronic disease, I've got, Lord knows, ton of exposure to stuff, then certainly we consider, let's do a 28-day detox, okay? And for some folks, I even have to go longer than that. So just some data. So I mentioned some of these supplements. Now I want to kind of pull through and give you some of the science behind what I was just speaking of. So certainly omega-3 essential fatty acids, I use it for everything. Helps everything head to toe, right? Helps with glucose. It's also going to help decrease CRP. C-reactive protein is an inflammatory marker. Fish oils help decrease inflammation. Going back to #1 killer for men and women in the U.S., cardiovascular disease. What's behind one of the aspects behind cardiovascular disease? Inflammation. What in part is behind diabetes certainly has an inflammatory component at the cell. Phytonutrient multi. Again, we've got great science and data on this, how it's helping to protect the DNA of our system. It's helping against the oxidative stress. That's where issues come in, to where we have this oxidative stress and oxidative damage at the cellular level. That's what's kicking off disease. So this is a food-based multi, very rich in antioxidants with methylated Bs. 50% of the population has what's called an MTHFR deficiency. What that means is you're not able to metabolize your folic acid and B12 properly. Methylation affects over 300 different chemical pathways in the human body. So I put everybody on methylated Bs. I hedge the bet. I cover that piece, okay? Vitamin D, as I said, vitamin D does so very much. Certainly, you can look at data with regards to diabetes and metabolic disorders, but also insulin sensitivity, inflammation, immune, the list goes on and on and on. Again, that's why I kind of say, there's just certain things here that we all ought to be taking every single day, regardless, just for optimal health. And then we kind of add in these other things as needed if we're having an issue. Berberine. So I mentioned berberine being in our metabolic formula, in our Metabolic Protect formula. This is what it looks like right here. It's been shown to regulate glucose and lipid metabolism. So it's helping with not only glucose, it's helping with cholesterol, both in vitro and in vivo. So in the first 7 days, it led to a reduction in fasting blood glucose from 9.6 to 2.7. That's pretty big, right? So, it's helping to pull that down. Alpha lipoic acid, it's a great antioxidant. It improves insulin sensitivity. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to help get that insulin, the glucose, into the nucleus of the cell. And it does an amazing job with neuropathy. So if you have any neuropathic condition, if you have any burning, tingling, numbness, whether it's insulin related or not, alpha lipoic acid is something I put all of my patients on. It does an amazing job for neuropathy. So, some pharmaceuticals that are very commonly used, for instance, gabapentin, right? Neurontin is the brand name for it. Well, the problem with that drug is it has a whole host of side effects, but also is tough on the gut. Alpha lipoic acid helps support detoxification, helps with the liver, helps with the brain, but it's also helping with the blood sugar and helping with the regeneration of the nerve endings. So it works very well. Ultraflora Biome Pro. So this is the probiotic that really has been shown so very beneficial and has some research with regards to insulin sensitivity. Typically one a day. Typically I'm going to dose that at bedtime. Okay, so lots of information on this. It just isn't take any old probiotic. It is all about quality. And that's why I'm very picky about the brands I use, the companies I deal with, and the specific products for the specific issues, right? Because if you listen to our gastrointestinal webinar, I think we also had one specifically on probiotics. We went over a variety of different probiotics. So, we'll use different probiotics depending on what's going on. Why? Because there's different combinations. And there's different science and research behind the different strains and what one is good for and what another is good for. Okay, so it's really next generation, if you will, right? So again, what's in here, really kind of hitting a variety of things. You can see data on type 2 diabetes, obesity, cardiometabolic disorders, hypertension, liver disease, inflammation, bowel disease, colorectal cancer. Pretty cool stuff, right? I mentioned medium chain triglycerides, so MCT oil earlier, right? So that's going to help with weight loss, body composition, helping you feel full, helping with brain function. So we do have that as an oil. We also have it as a powder. So if you'd rather, hey, I'm doing a shake and I'd rather add a powder to it, that's fine. You can do that. If it's, I want to use an oil and add that to it. Sometimes it kind of depends on travel too, right? Well, Baylor, I'm traveling. I'd rather take a powder with me than have an oil, leak in my suitcase, etc. Absolutely. Trust me. I've had oils leak in my suitcase and that's not good. MCT oil, especially for if you do the ketogenic diet. Okay, I'm not going to get too much into ketogenic today. Again, we do have a webinar on that you can watch specifically more so. So ketogenic is more burning the fat for the fuel. Works very good for some people. Other people have a harder time with it. Again, it's really kind of picking the right diet for you. We can certainly help you with that. Rhonda is one of our nutritional consultants. She's worked for me for about 17 years. She does an amazing job of teaching you how to eat, when to eat, what to eat, right? Not trying to make you dependent on, hey, come and see me every week or every other week. No, let's give you the tools and teach you how to do it, right? Our baseline is really the low glycemic modified Mediterranean style diet. When I look at all the numbers globally, not just in America, but Mediterranean style diet is the healthiest globally. Okay. We can skew that a little bit. So if you're having blood sugar issues and we're going to skew it to more of a low glycemic, we can modify it depending on what your inflammatory markers and stuff are. We can also use a medical food. So a shake, ultra glucose control, is a medical food that was really designed and highly researched by the Joslin Institute of Diabetes. So that is going to help patients with both prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. I see a decrease in fasting blood glucose and hemoglobin A1C with this shake all the time. Does an amazing job. It tastes fantastic. Generally 2 scoops twice a day. If you've got a lot of gut stuff going on, then certainly we could, especially the first month or so, use one called Ultra GI Replenish to help with that gut barrier and function, right? We can even add MCT oil to really either one of these if we need to help slow in that glucose metabolism and help with cell signaling. But generally, we'll do ultra GI replenish for a month, sometimes two, sometimes longer, depending what's going on and how long you've had an issue. And then we'll shift that to a different shake. Again, ketogenic diet is an option for folks as well. That is typically more of a higher fat, adequate protein, low carb diet. And we do support that using MCT oil. We'll use exogenous ketone salts to help keep you in ketosis, and also ketogenic shake, which has the right fat, protein, and carbohydrate ratios, right? But the Mediterranean style diet has been shown to be beneficial for metabolic syndrome, right? So ultimately, that's going to be able to help you reduce that fat mass, reduce high blood pressure, help with other cardiovascular risk factors, and of course, helping to decrease the factors that are promoting type 2 diabetes. Okay. So again, lots of research, lots of data on the use of a Mediterranean style diet. So this is nothing new. It's nothing heebie-jeebie. There's good, solid data. So as I mentioned, the ultra glucose control, the Joslin Diabetes Center said, hey, look, this is the best when we're having as far as ratio with blood sugar issues. Well, what is the breakdown of the ultra glucose control? Boom. That's what they studied there, right? They compared this to many other different leading shakes and different things, and the ratios are just all wrong, which is why a lot of people will try some different typical shakes that may be highly advertised, but yet, you may lose a little bit of weight. But when really you look at bioimpedance analysis and you look at what's going on, you're losing muscle mass and increasing fat mass. That's not healthy. What do we want to lose? We want to lose fat. You want to maintain your muscle, maintain your bones, maintain your organs. We don't want to lose organs. We don't want to lose brain. We want to lose fat. That's what we want to lose, right? So that's ultra glucose control is going to help with keeping this more normalized, right? Again, ketogenic diet is going to help more with that fat utilization, fat oxidation. Lots of data on ketogenic. Okay, there's different ways to do it. We certainly have done worked out well with doing modified ketogenic. So again, let us help you with it. Let us help guide you through it. Let us teach you, or kind of pick out, well, what's best for me? Should I be doing detox? Should I be doing GI? Do I need to modify towards an inflammatory diet, or ketogenic, or Mediterranean, right? So we can kind of help choose. This is Mediterranean. This is good, yummy food, right? This makes me hungry. Hopefully it makes you hungry too. I mentioned bioimpedance analysis. So this is where, typically we got a massage table, we put you down, we hook up a lead on your ankle, hook up a lead on your wrist. It throws a small current through the body, and what it measures is fat mass, muscle mass, intracellular fluid, extracellular fluid, and it also gives us something called basal metabolic rate, which is, how many calories per day do you need to eat to maintain your current weight? So from there, we can back into how many calories do you need to eat to lose weight, right? And also the water inside the cell versus outside the cell makes a big difference. If you've got more water out of your cell than inside your cell, you're going to have a very difficult time losing weight. So this is the big tip-off that, hey, we need to detox. We need to do that 10-day or 28-day detox and, change up the diet, pull things out, really focus on liver, focus on gallbladder, focus on gut, and helping to balance that. So this is all that information that comes out of that BIA, right? It also gives us something called phase angle, which gives us a relativity on health, where you are health-wise. So lots of good information, certainly fat mass, extracellular mass, muscle mass, and of course that kind of water water percent. So, in this one, it has more water inside the cell than outside the cell, which is good, which is what we want. Okay. So again, kind of recap. My baseline supplements. This is, what should we be doing every day? The phytonutrient multi. And for this, really, if you're thinking you've got a blood sugar issue, again, go to 2 a day. And so that's for tabs. If you do the capsules, then it would be 3. Okay. The fish oils, either the liquid or the soft gels. Again, if you think, or if you're having issues, I've got a range here. If you're absolutely healthy, nothing wrong, all your numbers are great, then, 1 teaspoon or 2 a day. If you're having issues, cholesterol's higher, your blood sugar's off a little bit, then again, that's why we're going to gravitate towards that higher number. 5,000 IUs with the K2, 1 a day. Certainly, if labs, we're going to go higher. And then certainly CBD, really, I've pulled that in for anybody about 35, 40 and above from an aging perspective. Why? CBD hits 220 systems. That's a lot of systems in the body. Inflammation, gut, immune. The list goes on, right? Inflammation, inflammation, inflammation. So that's why we pull that in. Whether you do it as a tincture, a gummy, a soft gel, we've got lots of options. We've got ways that you can do it. So anyway, generally we start low and increase the dosage up. Generally, I'll start at about 15 milligrams and slowly increase that up. How you know that you need to back off the dose? If you start seeing daytime sleepiness, decrease the dose. In addition to the basics, that's where, do we need to pull in the ultra glucose control as a shake? Do we need to pull in the Ultrafluorobiome Pro as a probiotic to make sure the gut is where it needs to be? Do we need to pull in the Metabolic Protect, having that alpha-lipoic acid, berberine, biotin? Do we need to add some extra MCT oils? Do we need to detox? And I'm not saying necessarily everybody's got to do every single one, right? It depends where you are. It depends what your history it is. It depends where your numbers are. It depends how you're feeling. There are a lot of factors that really kind of go into that. So what I wanted to be able to impress upon you today and to teach is, the good news is there's lots of tools you can have in your tool bag, okay? And hopefully I've given you some ideas of when you can use each, when you can pull that in. Certainly if you need help with that, stop in the store, give us a call, pop us an email. If it's, okay, wait a second, I'd rather talk to somebody, sit down and schedule a consultation. Certainly we can do that via Zoom, WebEx, on the phone, do it in person. We are just asking right now, still with COVID and where that's at, if it's in person that we do, ask that you have been vaccinated. Okay. Webinar special, we are running a webinar special right now. So if you see and have a consultation with Rhonda, it's a free BIA. Now, if you just want to come into the store and have a BIA, I've got on here, it's a $35 value, because normally it's $35 when you're having a consultation, but somebody just walking in off the street that says, hey, I'm not doing a consult, I just want to have a BIA, that's normal charge on that is $50. But we are doing a free BIA right now when you do a consult. So as long as you schedule that, we'll go ahead and plan that accordingly. Also, our South River Full Spectrum CBD hemp oil right now is also buy one, get one free. Try to give you a good incentive to get started on that and try that and see what a difference that can do for you. So how do I get started? Certainly, again, stop in, see us. It's easy. We're here to help. You can email Allison at patientcare@southriverrx.com. She can help you. We have been open. Our doors have not closed during COVID. Certainly, if you have not been vaccinated, you do need to wear a mask coming in. We are on the honor system. Everybody's an adult and we're going to treat you like one, but please be respectful. If you don't want to come in, absolutely, we can still do curbside. We can also ship. Shipping's free on most orders over $75. again, if you're needing some help, or if you've got some chronic, lots of disease states, lots of issues, then schedule a consultation. If it's, man, Baylor, I'm on 30 different meds, I'm a freaking disaster, then maybe I need to see you originally, versus Rhonda. But if we can have you see Rhonda, then that's great. She's certainly less than I am. My rate is $250 an hour. Rhonda's rate's only $100 an hour. So certainly you can also order online. Most products we have in the store, we do have on our online store. You can go to our website and then click shop, and that'll take you right there. Certainly we're on all the different social media channels. I've mentioned YouTube. You can find us at South River RX, and that'll take you there. Most of you that have signed up for this and are on this webinar today have signed up for our email newsletter, so thank you. And as you know, we don't spam you, and I don't sell your information, nor will I. But do, take time, like us on the variety of media channels, give us a review. It's going to be a bad review. I ask, give us a call, talk to me about it. Let me know what we're doing wrong so we can make it right. Absolutely. So with that, I want to make sure we answer our questions. So if you want to use your chat, if I haven't hit on something today, or if you've got a burning question or issue, certainly type it in the chat feature and we'll get that answered for you. But for those that don't have any questions and want to go on, I want to thank you for your time today. And those that are joining us after today and watching us on the recording, thank you. And certainly don't hesitate if you do have a question and you weren't on the live and couldn't type it in the chat, then certainly give us a call, stop in the store, email us. We are here to help. We want to help you through your journey of achieving optimal health. Oh, wait, somebody just sent me a note. Can you take fish oils and MCT oil? Absolutely. Those are hitting a little bit different things. Both ultimately are helping to increase the fat, which is not a bad thing at all. They're good fats. Fish oils really ultimately are hitting everything head to toe. That MCT oil is being a little bit more specific. So yes, adding the MCT would not replace the fish oil. It would be in addition to. So that's a great question. And again, you can, when you do your questions, you can do it so everybody can see it, or you can just do it so I see it. In either way on that is fine. Well, again, thank you all for your attention today. If something comes up afterwards, please don't hesitate to stop in. We're happy to help you. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And next week, next Thursday at noon, we are having a webinar on sleep. So I know that's a big issue for an awful lot of folks. That's generally a very popular one. So be thinking of your questions and be sure to tune in and sign up for that one. So with that, I bid you farewell. Have a wonderful day. Thank you all.